Hey everybody, Christopher here.
Hey guys, Noah here.
Sorry we missed you last week, but to make up for it, we're back with a really exciting and interesting topic tonight. I'm really looking forward to this.
Oh, I am too, and it's one of the things we don't really get to kind of talk about yet, or a lot really at this point in time, because it's not something that we make a lot of videos about. But I do want to change that in the near future. I think I want to start making a little bit of stuff more about this topic.
Absolutely, I'm completely down for that. So once again, we've just left people hanging as we're going back and forth talking about the topic without saying what the topic is. I think that's kind of funny.
Hey, it's got to get people into it, you know.
It's suspenseful.
It's suspenseful.
So, for the big reveal, tonight we are talking about cryptids.
Ooh.
I know there's so many different directions that this could go. I don't even know where to start.
There are because and there's different classifications of cryptids. There's different ways that you could look at cryptids. It's not it's not really one clear path, if that makes any sort of sense. There's all different kinds of types, classes, and stuff like that. And that's why you can really get a lot into a lot of different avenues with this, like even conspiracy theories, which you know me, I love conspiracy theories. So there's that side of it too. So it really does get really interesting.
It's super interesting. Like I said, I don't even know where to begin because I'm just so excited.
I think that's also why too, like I say that like I do eventually want to make a full documentary, about us searching for whatever particular cryptid that we're looking for.
Absolutely. Because, I'm obsessed with connecting to Bigfoot.
Right.
Obsessed.
Bigfoot's a great one, so maybe that's where we start today. He's probably the most famous cryptid in my opinion.
I would say so. After my experiences in the woods at Fort Duffield this year involving Bigfoot and the forest people, my life has forever been changed. I've said that a number of times since my first experience there earlier this year. It has changed my life.
Right. I can understand that. So why don't you tell people a little bit about what you experienced in the woods?
So, end of May, beginning of June, I went to Fort Duffield in Kentucky, which is a former Civil War fort, which is now open for exploration, and you can even do paranormal investigations. I was part of an event which involved spirits and Bigfoot and extraterrestrials. So, I was there offering readings individually and gallery style. We had the famous Squatch man, Greg Yost, there going to the woods and connecting to the Bigfoot. And I myself did a CE5 session for extraterrestrial communication. We can talk about that another time.
Right.
When I first met Squatch Man, it was the night before the event started. We were at dinner and he sat down next to me and was talking. And someone asked me randomly, "What do you think about him?" And I was like, "Well, I just met him." And I answered very honestly. I said, "I've never seen his work, but listening to him, this is a man of integrity. As he sits here telling these stories of connecting to the Bigfoot, he's not making this up. It's like I could feel this man's energy in his heart so strongly that I just knew there was something really special there." So the next night, when it was time for him to do his thing, he walked to the tree line, and this whole group of people walked with him, and he started communicating with the Sasquatch, whom he refers to as the forest people. Some of them he was even calling by name.
Hmm.
And as he spoke to them, this man lit up the woods. He lit up the forest. There were sounds and shadows and movements and very clear eyes lit up. appearing out of the trees that were not there. And just listening to him interact and seeing a set of eyes and him going, "Oh, I know who that is. That's so and so." Like he knows who they are individually and by name. It was just beyond cool. I mean, at first, if I didn't realize immediately that everybody there was having the same experience and seeing the same things, I would have thought I was losing my mind. But
Right.
everybody was having the same experience. And another time I've been there when he's asked them to knock a tree down and you can hear a tree fall almost instantly. It's just, this man has a gift in connecting to them and bringing them forward. And from what I gathered, they want to be respected. They want you to respect the forest and respect nature. And if you give them that, you're going to have a beautiful experience. That's the only way I can say it. The experience I had there was absolutely beautiful. There was nothing frightening about it. There was nothing unsettling about it. It was fucking beautiful. It changed my life. And I've gotten to see him do this twice.
Wow. That does sound really interesting, especially because I think too, for most people, I think in the cryptid community or that, love Bigfoot or anything like that, I think that is such like a different take on just Bigfoot in general. You know what I mean? I don't think you ever see anybody really like out there like communicating with Bigfoot in that way. Like, you'll have a lot of like cases where people are going out there and they're like making Bigfoot calls, but like to specifically sit there and talk to them and ask them things and then it happened, that's really interesting to hear.
It's incredible. I'd never heard of anything quite like that until I saw him do it. There's nothing like it.
Right. That is interesting, and it's kind of like some of that. And I remember when we went to Fort Duffield and we kind of did that, and we didn't have a lot that happened, but I do remember at one point I did see like really quickly a pair of like the green eyes glowing through some of the brush, and it's kind of stuck with me about that because I have my general theories based off of that experience and what else I know about Bigfoot in the sense of, so I guess let me back up here, and it's basically because Bigfoot is one of, I think, the most controversial cryptids because there's always that argument between, there's how many people across time and space that have claimed to see Bigfoot, have stories about Bigfoot, and this is even back in the old times where there wasn't like communication like there was today. It was just that like different parts of the world were reporting seeing the same thing with slight variations, but pretty much the same thing across different countries and stuff like that, and they had no communication amongst each other. So there was no way that they were like calling people up and saying, "Hey, like I need you to say this or say that," because they didn't have communication with each other back then. They were just reporting the same thing.
Right.
So that's where it really starts, and I think you have to take that into account as far as like that's why it's weird. Fast forward in today's world where it's just blown up. You have Bigfoot conventions, literally hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people have stories of Bigfoot sightings and everything.
Right.
There's the flip side of this argument though, that with all of the people across time and space that have claimed to see him, why is it that nobody has clear cut, obvious evidence? Like we have footprints, we have the DNA, like we have weird DNA samples that don't seem to match any animals, which I would say is pretty weird, stuff like that. We have some photographs that are kind of blurry or you're not quite sure what you're seeing, and then obviously those are scrutinized as maybe being hoaxed, something like that. But it's kind of to the point where it's like, why hasn't anybody gotten that clear cut evidence? Like, why has nobody captured one? Why has nobody had a dead body of one? Stuff like that. You know what I mean? And you do, as a paranormal investigator or anybody of the sort, you do kind of have to take that side into account if you're going to be doing your job correctly. So that's why I bring this up, which leads me kind of into my theory about it, and it's not my theory in the sense of like, oh, I'm the one that came up with this. It's just that I've heard other people talk about it, and the more and more I look into it and do my own research, the more and more it makes sense. And it is the idea that Bigfoot isn't necessarily just some forest creature. He is more of an interdimensional creature that passes back and forth between two dimensions. And to me, while yeah, you can look at that and say like, oh, that's a really crazy theory, you're crazy, whatever you want to say, it's like, think about it. How has so many people seen this thing and reported this thing, but nobody's ever captured it or anything of the sort? Like some people report how he'll be there 1 second and then the next he won't.
Right.
So back to my thing about the eyes, because that's kind of what brought me down this road, is the idea that I think whenever you see stuff like that, whenever we're looking in the pitch black of night and then all of a sudden you see those eyes, Bigfoot I don't think is actually standing there in the physical presence. I think he's peering between the veil of the two dimensions, and that's where you see his eyes. Because I noticed when this was going on, it's not like you heard something walk up to the brushes or anything like that. You know what I mean? Or when I look back at the camera footage of the infrared cameras, I don't see anything physically standing there, right?
Right.
But I really remember seeing a pair of eyes. So why am I seeing a pair of eyes, but I'm not seeing a body? Well, possibly because he's not physically there in that moment. He's more peering through the veil. How they had this ability, why they had this ability, I don't know. I don't know at this current time, and maybe I'll never know. But it's an interesting theory that I think we kind of have to bring up with this subject.
I've been on board with that theory for a very long time, especially after my experiences this year. That to me just solidified it. And just for reference, I'm 90% sure that Squatchman has said the green eyes, those are the younger ones. I've heard
Okay,
him say that.
okay. What was it? It was like green eyes represented the little ones. Blue eyes were I'll let you because I'm not 100% sure on what he was saying.
No, the green eyes were the younger ones. Blue or red could be just about anything. I mean, he identifies one particular one by his red eyes. So.
Oh, okay, okay. Which what he called him Big Red, didn't he?
Right.
Yeah,
Right. And
that's
the other one that I heard him call most frequently by name was Clarence.
oh, Clarence. That's cool.
Yeah. I'll have to ask him one day, how did you come up with that? Is that just what you started calling him, or did you have an experience that led you to that's what you're supposed to call him? I'll have to ask him that next time I see him.
Right. And with this sort of idea that they're interdimensional beings or that kind of like you said, like you get this sense that what they want is just for you to respect nature itself, which is possibly why, there's people that have stories about, they're in nature, they're respecting nature, and the Bigfoots don't bother them. And then there's people that are out there that maybe could be interpreted as disrespecting nature or the forest and stuff like that, and that's where the Bigfoots are throwing rocks at them and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Right.
So you have to ask the question: Are they just simply Mother Nature's protectors?
Right. I mean, when I asked them for help, when you and I were at Fort Duffield, I feel like they helped me. And I'm not even going to say what it was specifically because that's not out there yet. People can watch that later. But I asked them to help me with something, an issue I was having when we were filming there, and I think they helped me.
I have my thoughts about that experience. I think you were kind of more in your head about that at the time, but that's just where we have differences
I
of opinion on that
disagree. I
one.
asked them to get rid of something for me. 1 minute it was there, then I asked them to get rid of it, and they were gone.
Right, but you also wasn't seeing what I was seeing in the infrared camera.
All that matters is that I asked them to get rid of them and I didn't see any more after that. That is all that matters.
Oh my god, that's
I
funny.
have one priority here. It's that I didn't
Yes.
see any more.
Yeah, as long as you don't interpret they're there, they're not there.
Right.
It is Bigfoot is such a cool and actually growing up I did have a lot of issues with Bigfoot because I did ask that question myself about like, well, if so many people have seen him, why does nobody have clear-cut evidence? And it wasn't really until the idea of him being an interdimensional being that it started to make a little bit more sense and I started to believe in Bigfoot a lot more. It's like, okay, if that's what we're saying, then let me look into this a little bit more. And the more I thought about it and the more I looked into it, I was like, okay, that kind of would explain what is going on here. So it really is interesting. But Bigfoot as being a cryptid is interesting because even though we're saying he's an interdimensional being and it's like we don't know physically how that works. The idea that something because obviously I've talked on this podcast before about my general theories about how like the different dimensions work in the sense of like we live in the third dimension, which is the physical world, and then spirits I theorize that they live more in the fourth dimension, right?
Right.
And I'm basically saying that Bigfoot might be a being that lives in the fourth dimension, but somehow literally has the ability to manifest a physical body and come into the third dimension. It's such a weird concept because we don't even I don't even understand really where to begin to understand that, but it's just that's my general theory and just based off of plain knowledge, it's what makes the most sense to me. It's how I have to kind of like say it to make sense. Maybe someday I'll be a little bit more of an expert on that and I'll be able to speak on that a little bit more, but just based off of my general knowledge about it right now, that's really the best way I can explain it or describe it. But I think it's interesting that he's one of the ones that seems to be more of just natural force of nature.
Right.
Where some of the other cryptics I think we're going to talk about today, I theorize more being involved with maybe some more conspiracy theory type stuff or things of that nature.
Right. What else is on your mind? What else is on your list?
I think one that I have to bring up, and this one is a full on conspiracy theory, and it is the Wendigo.
Okay.
And it's because there was a documentary that I watched several years ago. I've actually went back and watched this documentary several times, and it is called Helltown. And it tells the story, and I won't get super into it because it's kind of a really long story that I don't want to like dive too much into, but I do really highly recommend that people go check out that documentary. It's called Helltown, and it's about the abandoned national park of Boston, Ohio. And basically, just for general whatever, in this documentary, they start talking about how Boston, and these are things that you can look up and you can prove. Boston, Ohio was a full-on town before it was a national park, and then one day, randomly, the military actually came into that town of Boston, Ohio, and forced everybody out of their houses, like no warning, no nothing. They didn't even really have time to pack up. They packed up whatever they could and then left. So some of the houses that are there still have some of the items like in there because they like just got up and left. And the military's reasoning behind this was that they were going to make it a national park. Just based off of that right there, that doesn't make sense to me.
Right. I agree.
You out of nowhere just moved people out like that in a big hurry because it was a national park? No way. How the documentary starts is back in I think it was 2016. Don't fully quote me on that because I'm a little bit I can't quite remember the year, but I think it was right around the year 2016. Mind you, Boston, Ohio National Park is illegal to go there. Now there are parks that you can go to, but the main part of Boston, Ohio National Park is to this day still illegal to go to. You are trespassing on private, you know, state property, which I find weird, first of all. But back in 2016, there was a couple of teenagers that snuck into Boston, Ohio, as most teenagers would do, and they were in this tunnel and they were filming on something. I don't know what app it was, but it was a social media app. I know they were live streaming something and they were in this tunnel. And all of a sudden, in the background of this tunnel, you see something really, really weird. And it kind of grunts, and then they just start taking off running. And then it kind of like cuts out and stuff like that. And it was reported that I think at least one of them died, and then a couple other ones were hospitalized, but nobody was willing to talk about the experience. Not the parents, not the teenagers, nobody. Nobody had a comment about this incident that happened, right? So that leads this guy to create the documentary, and he starts going back into looking into the military documents and stuff like that, what the hell was going on and stuff like that. Well, he ended up finding this guy that was in the military at the time, and his specific role in what was happening was he was put on this task force to essentially go into Boston, Ohio after everybody had been evacuated to they told them that what they were doing was they were just going to make sure that everybody like got out of the homes and stuff like that. But weirdly enough, they gave them a video camera and told them to film the whole thing. I don't know why you would need that. If your job is just to go push people out, I don't know why you would need a video camera. And it goes so the story goes on and stuff like that, and they essentially stumble upon this underground bunker looking thing that looked like it was very military, and there was this one like looking like I'm gonna call it uh, a subsection in the bunker that looked like it was holding something there, and it broke out. And whenever it broke out, that's where like you would see like people were in the middle of playing poker, stuff like that. Chairs were thrown everywhere. It literally looked like everybody ran out of there in a panic. And then something was released. And long story short, and again, go watch that documentary because it's going to dive into even some things I'm not mentioning here about the whole thing. But essentially, they called it the Wendigo. And my general theory based on that is that what actually happened was the military was possibly performing experiments on who knows what. You can sit here and conspiracy theorize about all kinds of things. You could say that they were experimenting on animals. You could even say they were experimenting on people. That's a really scary thing to say or a strange thing to say maybe, but you start to ask those kind of questions. But I think they were experimenting on something, and that's what led to that. Now, there is a subsection to this story that's also a possibility, and this is the one that I actually think I agree with a little bit more. And this is where it gets interesting, and I think you'll really like this part. You're obviously a little bit, or not even a little bit, but really familiar with like Native American culture, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, the Native Americans were really known for being very like spiritual people and
Well,
performing like some of the earliest versions of like of witchcraft and stuff like that. And they were known for like summoning spirits, like to protect sacred land, right? Well, there was this story that how when the Europeans like first came to that spot in Boston, Ohio, they were met by the Native Americans that lived there. And of course, I don't really need to explain what happened, but the Native Americans then out of their grief and wanting revenge and stuff like that cursed that land because it was their sacred land. So they cursed it. The legend goes that they summoned a spiritual entity to protect that land, and people claim it was the Wendigo, right?
mm-hmm.
So, based off of this idea that they summoned something of, and I think this is where it kind of also ties in with the Bigfoot idea in that we talk about, well, how do they summon a spirit and it's a physical thing. Maybe it's the same exact way that Bigfoot is a thing, right? Because we just talked about how Bigfoot is possibly a spiritual entity from the fourth dimension that somehow manifested a physical body to be in the third dimension.
Right.
So, is it possible that then all of these cryptids or all of these monsters we talk about are actually from the fourth dimension and given physical bodies in the third dimension? But what I think happened was the military discovered this creature, captured it, and then was performing experiments until it broke out.
Makes sense.
It's my general theory about that. I really encourage people to go watch that documentary because it is very, very interesting. It's really cool. But we have to ask those type of questions like, what are these things? Because there's too many people that are reporting or getting hurt by these things to not entertain the idea that there is something strange about the universe.
Right.
What's your general thoughts and ideas about that?
I don't even know why. And I'll go back. I'll get back on track in a second.
No, yeah, go ahead.
But as you were talking about that, the very first thing that popped in my head when we were at Crescent recently, I told you the experience I had of seeing something run by me.
Yeah.
My first time there, I'd separated from the group for a second to go and do something, and I watched something run by in front of me, something big and on four legs, and just it was just dark and menacing and shadowy. And as I watched it go, I thought, okay, now's a really good time for me to go back to the group. And as I started walking back, I heard one of them say, "Did you guys see that?" I thought, okay, I'm not the only one that saw it. And we started talking about it more. And I'd said, you don't have to worry about seeing it. You only have to worry when it sees you. It was just the most unsettling statement. But as you talked about that, that's where my mind went back to that experience.
That is interesting. I think that's a good point to bring up too.
I never really thought about other cryptids operating the same way as Bigfoot, potentially being the interdimensional beings and going back and forth. That does make a lot of sense. The idea of them getting a physical body when they're here and being able to be captured, that's really fascinating.
So let me bring up another point to maybe even kind of I don't know if you're thinking about this, but let me bring this into an example as well. You know how a lot of paranormal investigators, like psychic mediums especially, whenever they go into a place and they talk about how they see something that's not human, and they'll talk
Right.
about like different features and stuff like that, like some walk on four legs and stuff like that, and you're like, that's really strange. Like, what the hell is that? That's not a human spirit. That's not like necessarily an angel or a demon or anything like that. They just talk about this weird creature that's in a place. Are those what I'm talking about in that realm?
Could be.
Right.
Or or is what people are describing when they say they're seeing this non-human entity,
Right.
is it just energy that's taken on a form, and that's the form it's taken on?
Well, right. So basically, you're talking about egregores,
Right.
right? Talk
One
about
of my
creating.
favorite subjects, as you
Right.
know.
Right. And but this is kind of where I'm going to tie this back into the idea of the Native American culture because they talked about how they summoned spirits. What if they were creating egregores for a purpose? So
Right.
therefore, when they create an egregore, there's that level of spirit that they created an egregore, but then there's even this other level where somehow they were able to come over into our world in the third dimension and have a physical body, and that's
Right.
why they look the way that they do.
Right.
It's a
I
really
can get behind
strange
that.
it's really strange theory, but I feel like we have to ask these type of questions because like it kind of makes sense to me, and like, you know what I mean.
It does.
I'm not saying that that is the answer. I'm just saying like, oh, I mean that it somewhat makes sense. Like I could see it. I'll entertain that idea.
Right. If that's how it works when they're in a physical body, if you can capture one, I really want someone to get me a chupacabra. I really want my own chupa. I thought I almost had one once.
You thought you almost had a chupacabra?
Yes. So we had a dog that I called Chupacabra.
Yeah.
First time I met this dog, he had his lip like caught up here and he was like drooling everywhere. I'm like, oh my God, it's a Chupacabra. So we were driving back to Wisconsin at the time from an event in Illinois. Google Maps was going, and one of us said something about the dog and called him Chupacabra. And Google Maps said, showing results for Chupacabra along your route.
It actually takes you to a chupacabra.
Well, that's what I thought. I thought I was about to get my own real live chupa. But instead, what it tried to do was reroute me 600 miles out of the way to a restaurant called the Chupacabra.
Oh.
So that's a whole other can of worms. How is Google Maps saying this is along my route when it's trying to reroute me 600 miles out of the way?
Yeah, what's that about? Yeah, like for real.
Totally off topic, but that was one of my first thoughts when that happened.
That makes
Then I
sense.
settled into the disappointment of, oh, I'm not really going to get my own chupacabra just yet.
Right. There's that little bit of disappointment that starts to set in. Like, oh.
Right. I pouted the whole ride home after that.
I feel like another. I don't know if these are considered cryptids, but I'm going to put them in this category. Vampires. I don't know if you would really. I don't know if most people would consider those cryptids, but I'm going to put them into this category simply because they are obviously very popular in folklore, and they're something that is supernatural that nobody really knows what they are. Like, because my thing is that I think we do kind of have to, whether something is completely folklore or wrong or anything like that, you do kind of have to ask the question of like, who came up with this idea? You know what I mean? Like who sat there and like thought of these weird things, and then it just became as popular as it did. And it's almost kind of like I don't know that they are fake. I almost feel like while they might not be exactly what they are in the movies, I think there is something out there that represents what somebody saw. And when it comes to the vampires, this dives into a whole can of worms that we can't really get into today. But I remember telling you about that podcast that I had watched one time where somebody was talking about the old Masons and stuff like
Right.
that. And he was talking about how he got up to the level of 33rd Mason and then he started going down this road. And he started talking about how there are satanic vampires. And essentially, the more that like you go down this road and the more you do, you know, A, B, and C, you essentially become what is classified as a satanic vampire. And he kind of talked about how like that's where it comes from, is what these people are. And I almost feel like that there is almost kind of like I feel like it's almost a human mutation through magic. Now people are really going to think I'm crazy if they don't believe in that, but like it is what it is. But it's almost, I almost kind of look at that in the way that he was explaining it, and some of the rituals specifically that he was talking about they would perform. I'm not really going to dive too deep into some of the rituals they would do because they're pretty disturbing. But definitely, if you're interested in that kind of thing, go look into it because it's a whole freaking rabbit hole. But yeah, some of the rituals they would do, it's like they're practicing really. intense dark magic. And then they sort of have these mutations. So you're literally mutating people through magic. And I almost kind of like also maybe generalize that as like, is that someone becoming more and more demonic? You know, they're no longer even human at that point, and I have to ask that question. So, what do you
Right?
think
Are
based
they
off that?
losing their soul?
Right, right. What do you think based off of what I what, on that?
I I I never saw the conversation going that direction. You really threw me when you even pulled vampires out. But
I like to surprise, you know.
you do. I guess I'm gonna have to look into what you just said a little
Right.
more, because I'm
I
not
understand that.
entirely familiar with that.
I understand that. It's a whole can of worms, like I said, because there's so many different avenues that this kind of goes into. And again, I'm not gonna talk too much about it, but he gets into a lot about like some of the things that people kind of think about Hollywood, like
Right.
some it kind of gets into that. So it's really interesting stuff about some of the stuff that people are doing. And it basically, if you have questions as to why some people might seem to like not be aging, like, or like, damn, they're like 60 years old but they still look like they're 30, like it kind of makes you think a little bit more about what what's going on in our world and what are we being lied to about. And it really dives into that. And you know me, I love anything that's conspiracy theory, so of course I dive right into it.
Now you're gonna make people wonder about me because I look so much younger than I am. I
you
do
just
not look my age.
you just sacrifice chupacabras.
Whatever it takes.
Anyway, moving on. No, it really is. It really is an interesting topic, and like I said, like I like to dive down roads that I think a lot of people don't really dive down. It's just the weird way I think my mind works. I always seem to go places that I want to say the normal person doesn't.
That's a fair way to put it.
I guess. But then, so back to the idea of cryptids too. We also have the other category that I kind of want to touch upon real quick that are they're labeled cryptids, but I don't think they're actually anything weird. So my perfect example of what I'm going to say here is the Loch Ness monster.
Okay.
I feel like the Loch Ness monster is not really a cryptid. I feel like it's actually just some prehistoric sea monster that was from, the prehistoric age that has somehow lived on.
Right.
And it's one of those things that now I will state this real quick because I can't even remember the name of the lake that is famous for having the Loch Ness monster. I'm going to say that one is wrong because you can't convince me that inside that lake, which isn't massive, you know what I mean?
Right.
That all this time nobody has gotten, clear cut evidence of that Loch Ness monster. And a lot of people might, you know what? I also could say, oh, well, maybe it's the same thing as Bigfoot, maybe.
Right.
But I think there's been enough evidence to kind of negate that the Loch Ness monster is in that lake. I think enough people have kind of like proven some of the pictures were hoaxed and stuff like that for me to say that, like, yeah, I just don't think he's there. And plus it just doesn't make sense. Like, yeah, somebody would have found him in that lake. However, I will say that the idea that he lives in the ocean, oh,
Oh
absolutely.
yeah.
We, to this day, we have only mapped out 5% of our oceans, and our oceans make up most of our world.
Right.
So how in the hell are we going to sit here and say that, like, oh yeah, we've discovered every species out there? Which they don't say that, but it's kind of like, it's the idea that, like, what was it, like the giant squid
Right.
just was like discovered like relatively like recently.
Right.
Like, I know it's been at least probably 10 years, but like
That's
That
still
is somewhat.
recent.
That's still pretty recent, and like when that was discovered, and now it's a big thing. Everybody knows what that is. So the idea that there's some prehistoric Loch Ness monster out in the oceans, oh, absolutely. Because like, think about like the Mariana Trench.
Right.
Like, we can't even go down there, so who knows what's down there?
Right.
So I figured I'd add that. So I think there are some things like there was this show that I was watching one time, and they were talking about a pterodactyl that was like killing people, kidnapping people, yada yada yada. And they ended up finding out that the the creature they thought was a pterodactyl, it was actually just what they call the thunderbird. Which, if you don't know what the thunderbird is, go Google it. It's actually pretty interesting, but it's a very large bird that
There's a really good chance I would not want to meet this.
no, you wouldn't. But like they're massive. They're massive. But that's what it was. So I think sometimes whenever we see something like in a glimpse, or maybe we're out in the woods late at night and we don't quite know what something is, sometimes I think we easily just will say, "Oh, that was a cryptid. That was unexplainable." And it's like, don't get me wrong, like we all do this. I'm not like pointing fingers here. I'm just saying we all do this, and it's sort of like sometimes you do kind of have to take a step back and try to rationalize something, whether you're in the cryptic community, paranormal community, UFO community. Always, I feel like before you just instantly say like, "Oh, this is weird," try to like look at it from an outside perspective. Like, is there something that's going to make this make sense?
Right. For sure. I've just
I'm
got
trying
this vision in my head now of like seeing the Thunderbird, and you just see my soul instantly leave my body. It just gives up.
to.
I've actually thought about like starting a GoFundMe for Mothman too, like sending money his way to not
Oh,
ever make an appearance to me. I don't want to see anything that flies.
actually, that you just kind of segued into the perfect cryptid, Mothman himself.
Absolutely. I did that on purpose.
Mothman is right up there with Bigfoot as far as being one of the most famous cryptids. And what's funny is that I would also argue he's the one that is the that there's not a lot known about him.
Right.
He just all that's really known is kind of what they depict him to look like, but just that he is an omen of something bad getting ready to happen.
Right. Yeah, I don't tend to go out and look for him the way I do Bigfoot.
Right. And it's also too because like you can't go to like a Mothman sighting and expect to see him again because he was there only to depict some sort of disaster that was getting ready to happen.
Right.
Where Bigfoot sightings are kind of like, oh, like there's a lot of sightings here, so like they believe that like oh he might live near there. Mothman's not like that.
Right.
And so it is really a strange thing. So I love Mothman because even as much as a general theory, like or theorist that I am, there's only so far I can go with Mothman because there's just so little that anybody really knows about him. However,
Right.
there is a book, and they kind of start to talk about this again. My favorite show that I keep referencing, Hellier, that we eventually need to watch together. But they kind of start to talk about this book, but it is called The Mothman Prophecies.
Right.
And the Mothman Prophecies also gets really strange into like it doesn't just talk about the Mothman himself, it also starts diving down like the UFO sightings
Right.
and stuff like that. It's interesting. Go give it a read. Like it's
I'm
interesting.
pretty sure I've actually got it here. I've got a copy of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I haven't yet. I haven't actually yet read it, and I want to so bad.
Same. I just have it on the bookshelf, but haven't read it yet.
I know parts of that book because of like watching the Hellier show and what they talk about. But now I want to go back and read that book myself because I feel like there's a lot in that book that actually are keys to understanding a little bit of even what we've been doing. And again, I know I can't really say much because but there's some things that we've
Right.
been doing here recently that now I kind of look at and I'm like, "Ooh, I think there's some hidden messages in that book that I need to read that book."
Yeah, I'm sure. I need to get on that too.
But yeah, I thought I'd bring up that book because I just feel it's important for some reason. Especially because he has this whenever he's talking to the UFOs in the book, he has his own sort of like decipher in that book.
Right.
And it blows my mind. It blows my mind every time I hear about it. It's just so interesting. But yeah, we had to bring up Mothman.
Oh, absolutely.
I want to go to Point Pleasant and look at all this stuff, but the problem is that as much as I want to go to Point Pleasant, it's also like I said, it's not like you're going to see Mothman there.
Right. Well, for me, that's okay. 'Cause I don't want to
Like,
see anything that flies.
yeah, I guess that's fair.
However, I'm going to throw it out there. I did walk through the butterfly garden at Lilydale the other day.
You did a good job.
I didn't shit myself. I didn't scream. I even stood there and watched the butterflies.
You did.
Lilydale makes me a different person.
Yeah,
The
what's
true test will be when I see my next bat.
baby steps.
Or
Let's go from butterflies to birds.
watch, it'll be Mothman next. I'll go right from now. I'll get my Mothman sighting.
No, see, because what's gonna be funny is we'll be together and like you'll be freaking out over Mothman, and I'll be like, Mothman,
I'll
it's
just
you,
faint. I'll just faint.
it's you, Mothman. I have so many questions.
I've just like completely passed out or died, and you're just ignoring my carcass laying there to go ask Mothman questions.
I'd be sitting there writing down everything he says, like really intently.
What if he was just like, let's go for a cup of coffee?
I'm going with Mothman to get a cup of coffee. Are you crazy? I'm like, yes.
And then maybe after the cup of coffee, you'd finally let someone know that I was laying there dead.
I'd come back for you after my cup of coffee. But while I'm getting coffee, I'm gonna introduce like, hey, this is my new friend Mothman. It's like I don't really know who he's here for the big disaster, but at this point in time, I don't care. I don't know who here is about to have a really bad day, but I'm having a great day.
Oh, that's so wrong.
It is, but what do we do that's right?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Any others on your list you want to throw out there?
I feel like again, it's like with cryptids, you can literally just go down the rabbit hole because there's so many.
Right. I mean, there's so many that just seem to be like regional or to a specific location. I mean,
Right.
Bigfoot's everywhere, but there's so many that aren't, that just seem to be
Well,
attached to a place.
right. Or there's the fact that there's a lot of the same ones and they have different names, but they're the same thing.
Right.
So I guess I don't really have any that are like super specific that I guess I want to cover anymore. Do you have any?
I don't. We got my favorite ones.
Yeah, I think we did too. So I mean, maybe this is the perfect time to ask anybody if there are certain cryptids that you want us to talk about or cover. I guess let us know in the comments, as
Yeah, if you
usual.
can throw even bonus points if you throw one out there that we've not heard of.
Oh, for real. Especially because like I feel like with all the how much I get into those things, I'm like I would be really interested to see if somebody's able to stump me on one. Like, oh wow, I've never heard of that one.
Right. Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Hell yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, I think this is definitely worth revisiting if people give us some comments, and even just doing our own research and coming up with some of the more local ones. I'd love to dive into that and learn about those myself. So
Oh, absolutely. And like I said before, as always, like I do eventually want to create some sort of documentary about us instead of paranormal investigating, going out and searching for a cryptid.
right. Well, Google Maps might take us right to that chupa.
Big Google Maps take me to Bigfoot.
Showing results along your route.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Would be
Oh my
epic if it
god.
took us right to the fort where I had my experience.
Like,
That would
oh,
be epic.
he is here. That would be cool. That would be cool.
Yeah, it would.
Hell yeah. Well, I guess that brings today's episode into a close. Like always, hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Leave us any sort of comments in the comment section about, any cryptids that you know about that maybe we didn't mention, maybe ones that we don't even know about, or just tell us your own stories about maybe something weird that happened to you. We'd love to hear about it. And we'll see you
Absolutely.
again next week.
See you next time.
All right. Bye, guys.